Hey everyone, it's the Kung Fu Genius, aka Alex Richter. And if you're listening to us on audio only, I'd appreciate you rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen to it. And of course, if you like what I do here, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius on YouTube and hit that bell for notifications. Are you a fan of Wing Chun Kung Fu? Well, if you listen to me, I assume you are. I got great news for Kung Fu Genius fans. Right now, you can get an all-access 1-month free trial subscription to Wing Chun Illustrated magazine. Yes, I said free. Go to WCInewsstand.com and register in the upper right-hand corner, fill in your email and password, and use the code KFGTrial to get your free trial to the issues from 2011 to the current issue. That's right, all the issues, even the one with this guy on the cover. My Kung Fu Genius column is in all the new issues, as if you need another reason to get this awesome magazine. Go get your free trial subscription today. For all that information, check out the description below. And with that, let's get started.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot nonsense from YouTube. Lots of gems, lots of ninja invisibility, lots of "I'll fight you," only if you use the super secret style you learned from Yip Man. Let's get to it.
He is unstoppable, unbeatable, unbelievable. He's Alex Richter, the Kung Fu Genius.
And every day, I practice martial arts.
Watch out!
Word is, I'm a Kung Fu genius. Practiced all day like a genius.
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. See, fool.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So, looks like we got another AMA, more questions, and yeah, why don't we just
People like these M&Ms.
M&As.
AMAs.
Reminds me, like, many years ago, I went to a martial arts business convention, like, where you learn how to, do martial arts business and stuff like that, and it's mostly karate schools and schools that teach a lot of kids, right? So as a Wing Chun guy and as someone who doesn't really teach kids, I was kind of like, I stuck out like a sore thumb. But it was really funny because this had to have been, let's say, 2009. And so a lot of the karate guys, the karate schools, they were trying to pivot into like teaching MMA.
Okay.
But it was funny because you got like all these different karate guys, and these are like American karate guys, like, I don't know karate, but I know crazy, and I've been teaching karate for 20 years. I teach kids. I teach the shit out of karate in Alabama, right?
Yes. Elvis impersonators.
Yes, pretty much. All right. And so for them, they're like, well, we gotta keep up with new trends. And right now, this M&A thing is really big. and I remember there was this one karate guy, and he was some kind of grandmaster, and he had a school with like a bajillion students in, Pennsylvania, ass crack, Arkansas.
Because they were all going out.
Yeah, but he was like, they wanted to add an MMA program, like they offer karate and MMA and different things, and he just kept saying like, yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that M&A program? I really need to know how I can integrate the M&A into my adult and children's karate class, right? So every time, like, I say AMA, right. I also, like, worry about coming off like that a little
M&A.
bit, right? Yeah. Well, these episodes are fun because, essentially it's like a mixed bag.
Yeah.
People ask us different things, and then so we can go from topics like Bruce Lee, Wing Chun training, all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And, a couple episodes ago, we did the Bruce Lee phone conversation. We did another one with the Ted Thomas interview. We will do another one probably next. I think our next episode will do the Alex Ben Block interview, so that we can do that. Because a couple people did actually ask, because early on in the Kung Fu Genius podcast, we would occasionally do a topic episode, right? Like the Kung Fu tournaments or the challenge fights or something like that. And we've pretty much kind of resigned ourselves to doing this Ask Me Anything format, because I personally think it's fun because we have a lot more variety in one episode. And two, we don't have to do shit to prepare for it. I have to do a topic. Okay, I got to go take some time. I got to, look up a few things to make sure I don't misspeak as much as I can. And so anyway, yeah, man, let's get to it.
All right, so first off, we got Min Din.
All right, Min Din in the house.
As this year is the 50th anniversary of The Big Boss, I have a question about the film. Something that has bugged me for years, but I've never heard anyone talk about it. Okay. What happened to the Ice Factory manager? He never gets his comeuppance?
Comeuppance?
Comeuppance Comeuppance?
What?
I never seen this word in my life.
You know, Dre, like a few weeks ago,
Comeuppance.
you were so eloquent on the podcast. What happened,
I know,
man?
That's
It's like you read a bunch of books.
That's the lack of drugs.
That's right. Got it. Comeuppance.
Comeuppance. All right. Thank you, Minden. Is this another deleted scene we haven't heard of, or did something happen to the actor? Loving the podcast. Keep up the great work.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that great compliment, Minden. Wow. What happened to the ice factory manager? Well, I like the funny thing. It's like, did something happen to that actor so they couldn't resolve his storyline, right? Or like, is there a deleted scene? Because, one thing about the early Golden Harvest productions is those stories were so tight. I mean, just so written, so well written. All the little side plots, those always get resolved nice and cleanly by the end of the movie. What the hell happened? No, man. I mean, come on. This was a very shoddily written movie, all right? Big Boss, it was a very poorly written film. And originally James Tien, who later just played a second fiddle character in that movie, he was supposed to be the original star.
He got written out almost.
Yeah, he basically got written out. Now, you have to do a little thought
like
experiment.
A soap opera.
Yeah, you have to do a thought experiment. Imagine Big Boss, not with Bruce Lee, but with James Tien, with his martial arts skill and his charisma. And I'll tell you, if Bruce Lee did not take his position and take his job and become, the main actor for Big Boss, no one would ever be talking about Big Boss today. Damn. Because James Tien didn't have the charisma of Bruce Lee and didn't have the looks and everything like that, and certainly didn't have the martial arts skill. Big Boss would have been one of the most forgettable martial art films you could imagine, right? So, because...
Not even a cult classic.
If you take Bruce Lee out of that equation, it's a very simple and kind of dumb film, all right? But because Bruce is so awesome, he elevates the whole project, right? And I think we might have talked about it in the Ted Thomas interview. There's two deleted scenes that we know about, right? One is this famous saw in the head thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there was a photo like from some of the press releases where Bruce just kind of has this, he's got like a saw right through someone's head. And that doesn't make it into the final Big Boss, right? And so again, for the longest time, it's like, well, what happened to the saw in the head scene? It's like a very iconic photo. Scene. Well, from what I know, Bay Logan, who worked for Media Asia, which was essentially they were responsible for the Golden Harvest properties, among other things. He talked to people who, had access to all of that stuff.
Shout out to Bay Logan.
Yeah, and basically, this stuff, everyone wants to believe that, like, oh, someone has this, right? Mm-hmm. We talked a few episodes ago about the interviews that Bruce Lee did in Hong Kong, on Hong Kong TV, and how basically we don't have those. There's like, some people filmed it with 8mm off the screen, like where he's breaking the boards and stuff like that. But for the most part, that stuff is missing. And it could be just because they didn't keep it, they recorded over it, or it was destroyed, whatever.
Usually recorded over.
Yeah, but I actually forgot to mention on that episode, and one of the commenters, I don't remember their name, pointed it out to me. There was a telethon, I guess, when people call in and donate money for like, some disaster or something like that. Yeah. There was like a telethon on Hong Kong TV, I believe it was on TVB, and it was for either a typhoon or some landslides that had happened in Hong Kong in 1972. Like there was like some crazy rain, and Hong Kong's very hilly, and there were like a bunch of landslides, and like a lot of people were affected. It was either that or a typhoon or something like that. And so they were doing a telethon to raise money for people who were like affected by this, right? And TVB had this long telethon where they had like opera actors coming in, and they had singers, and it was like, variety show stuff for hours and hours and hours. And the crowning piece of this telethon, well, at least for Bruce Lee fans, is that Bruce Lee made a surprise appearance and then donated like a check of a few $1,000s or whatever to this cause, right? And he came out of a cake. And I believe that that the setup was like people thought it was going to be like a sexy girl coming out of the cake, right? As is kind of generally the case when someone comes out of cake, all right? And, it's like a big cake. And then it's, usually you think it's some like bikini girl coming out of that or something. And then so it was Bruce Lee. And that was like the big reveal, right? And then, he was there and I think he was wearing that like super swanky plaid green jacket that he had. And he donates his money, and we have photos of all this from all of Bruce Lee's television appearances in Hong Kong. There are photos for all of them, and we even know the dates that they occurred. But there's little to no video of this, right? And so there's some people who believe that they're private collectors who own this footage. And there are other people who believe it's destroyed, and other people who believe it doesn't exist anymore. We talked about this before, but I actually forgot to mention something. First of all, there's, I think, about 7 or 8 interviews that Bruce Lee did on Hong Kong TV throughout that 2.5-year period that he was living there, right? So my issue with people saying like, oh, a collector has all of it is, well, first of all, these were different shows for different channels, even though there weren't that many channels in Hong Kong at that time. So I don't think maybe one person might have 1 or 2 of them. I don't think one person has all of them, right? Because you would have to have access to it, right?
Like in a basement.
Yeah, but the question is always how, right?
No
So I
one
mean,
sees this.
the problem with conspiracies about these things is they're always very absolute. It's like, one guy has all of it or none of it, or, and it's like, no, one guy might have some of it. And I forgot to mention that in the particular instance of that telethon one, I actually do believe that a private collector has it. And I'm not a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory type dude. But the reason why I believe someone has it is, first of all, we have photos of him there. We know that it happened. And someone pointed out to me, which I totally forgot because I knew this already, there is footage. They actually have that entire telethon on TVB. The whole thing from beginning to end. So you have the opera guy singing and all that kind of stuff. The Bruce Lee part's missing.
Interesting.
So you can go there. I think I have to go and look. It's at least an hour, 2, 3. Maybe it's even a little bit longer. It might be a long video or it might just be snippets. But they have Cantonese opera, all right? Now, most Chinese don't even listen to Cantonese opera, right? So
Telethons are usually long, too.
Yeah, and so you have all this stuff. And, of course, everyone knows that this Bruce Lee makes an appearance here, right? And that is missing, which lends some credence to the fact that someone might have just taken that, right? So, okay, now, to come back to the question, Big Boss, all right? The saw in the head thing, I think they probably cut it off. They cut that out of the movie. They might have worried about censorship because it was like super violent and super bloody. And it might just not have fit. I think that footage is gone. Everyone wants to believe that someone has it. I'm of the opinion that if someone has it, they would have done something with it. They would have tried to monetize it or show it or whatever. And through all the Bruce Lee collectors and people I know in Hong Kong, there would have at least been whispers of someone having it. But the common consensus is no, that's gone. There's also the famous prostitute scene, which we talked about right before his character is going to go and fight the big boss, because he talks about it in the Ted Thomas one. That actually came out in the original version of the movie. But I believe that they cut it out later, and that's how he got those chips. Right, because he knows he's probably going to die. He's going to fight this guy, so he goes for one last hurrah with the prostitute, and has his kind of like one and only nude scene. And then when he leaves, he takes some chips, and that's why when he jumps over the fence and he kicks those 2 dudes, he eats the chips, right? And then of course, since they cut that out, it's always like it's a dude. Forget about the ice. What happened to the ice factory manager? How did you get those chips?
How did he get the chips?
Wait 1 second. Are we talking chips or are we talking crisps?
No, we're talking potato chips, which is what the rest of the world calls it. No, crisps.
but yeah,
Get out
but
of here with your British nonsense.
Hey, look, Hong Kong, probably crisps.
Oh.
Okay, but the film was shot in Bangkok, so they probably
so
used
they-
the real terminology there.
I
potato.
somehow doubt that.
No, it wasn't shot in Bangkok. Sorry, it was shot in Pak Chong in Thailand, all right? But I doubt very highly they're calling it crisps.
Well, I doubt they're calling it potato chips in Thailand.
Whatever. You and your
How
British
dare you.
nonsense.
Unbelievable.
Bunch of hot nonsense. You mucking up the English language left and right. So anyway, I don't know. Who knows? It's another one of those things. But in terms of what happened to the ice factory manager, I'm going to chalk that up to some shoddy-ass writing.
Got it. All right. Next up, we got Philip Jakumovsky. Should I hit the Wing Chun dummy with full power?
Is that a real question? Or are
That's
you
his
mucking
question.
around with me?
That's his question.
Well, with your head, you mean? hit it with what full power?
Should I
like,
hit
like run
the
into
Wing
it?
Chun dummy with full power?
So we are made out of flesh. A wooden dummy is made out of wood. If you hit it really hard, it's going to win. All right, it's going to bust you up. All right. No. Okay. Look, there are different methods. All right, for developing and training your power. Should you hit it full power? All right. Well, if it's got good padding on it, and it has if you're using a slat frame dummy, which is going to rock back and forth on the slats, and you have good padding on it, that's going to protect your wrist joints, because you don't hit the dummy usually with a fist, you hit the dummy with a palm. So you have to be confident that there's enough padding and there's enough give in the wooden dummy that if you hit it with a 90-degree angled wrist, it's not going to rip your wrist into pieces, all right? If you really want to train your power, use the wall bag, use a heavy bag, all right? Or punch yourself, all right? But to punch a wooden dummy or hit the wooden dummy full power, probably a little bit dangerous. Now, when we train the wooden dummy, of course, we train a special type of force we use there. It's not mystical, it's not mythical. It's a type of jolting force where you kind of get the dummy to rock by using a short jolt where it rocks back and forth, which is different from the baojia type of power that we normally use in Wing Chun. It's a much shorter, kind of more of a jostle almost, right? And that you need to learn from a qualified sifu to teach you how to kind of make the dummy rock that way, right? And that is a way to transfer power from a very short distance without using a lot of excessive body movement, right? And the crazy thing about that is that you can develop a fair amount of power on the dummy, but you're not using full power. I would be very mindful not to go full power on a wooden dummy, because I think you would just it's made out of wood, all right? It's wood. You are not. Now, of course, when I say this, you get all the tough guys. Yeah, I've been doing conditioning. I got iron forearms. I got this. In Kung Fu, we do it. All right, whatever. Okay, fine. All right, the dude's got iron arms and he can break the wooden dummy. Okay, fine. Okay, but very rarely does a fight get lost because my forearm conditioning was off, bro. All right? You know, why do people lose fights? They don't have technical proficiency to defend themselves. They don't have enough power to knock the guy down, or they didn't have good defensive skills, or a combination of those things, all right? You've never seen someone come back with a bloody nose and a black eye and say, man, I just couldn't beat the guy. What happened? Forearm conditioning was whack, man. Okay? As much as look, forearm conditioning is a byproduct of hitting the wooden dummy, of doing chi self, doing letso. I mean, even kickboxers who are blocking kicks and things like that, they also have tough forearms. So I'm not saying that that's not a byproduct of it, but this idea that like forearm conditioning is should be the most important type of power you're training. If your arm breaks because you block a kick or whatever, that's more on the technique than, yo, bro, you got to go back and condition those forearms more, right? Damn. So that's what I would say about that.
Awesome. Next up, we got Edgar Bantencourt. Is there ever...
Bantencourt? Yeah. Isn't it Betancourt?
Bentancourt.
All right.
Betancourt.
Betancourt.
Yeah. I know because one of my cousins has the same surname. That's why.
Oh, yeah?
On the Cuban side. Yeah.
How do you get that name?
Huh?
How do you get that name?
How do you get that name, Dre?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It just happened.
Good.
All right. Is there ever such a thing as a 5-point palm exploding heart technique?
Oh, from Kill Bill? You have to ask David Carradine.
You
gotta ask David Carradine. I wouldn't know that, right?
Why?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of the question about Dimmak and Death Touch and all these kind of secret points or whatever. These are really the creations of Kung Fu novelists and the Kung Fu pulp fiction novels, especially of the early 20th century, much more so than they are the creations of any kind of legitimate Chinese Kung Fu master, right? Now, pressure point stuff, all right? So, okay, obviously the 5-point palm exploding heart thing or whatever, this is something, made up by Quentin Tarantino, or Quentin Tarantino got it from a Kung Fu movie or whatever. We all know how accurate his depictions of Kung Fu are, right?
Yes.
So
Super accurate.
Super accurate, right? Yeah. Now the question is, okay, do these things like Death Touch and Dimmak, are these things legitimate, okay? So on the surface, I'm going to say no, all right? Because imagine if there was a certain way that I could grab you or put my hands on you or lay hands on you, like we say in New York. I'm gonna put hands on you, right? Yeah, I'm gonna lay hands on you, right? If there was a way that I could lay hands on you and just do a quick, stick my thumb in some part of your neck or in some part of your armpit or something like that, and that's gonna temporarily disable you or permanently disable you or keep you from doing anything or make you forget math or whatever these things are supposed to do, right? Well, I'll tell you what, all right? The U.S. government would have known all about this, and they would be training all the soldiers in close combat. Training would have all this kind of stuff because, look, if this stuff is real, okay, science and the military would be all over that shit, all right? It's like the other day I was thinking because someone was talking about horoscopes, right?
Okay.
And, in like... horoscopes are bullshit, man. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, horoscopes.
Come on, get out of here. Get out of here.
Everyone always
Get out of
asks
here.
me my sign.
Yeah, and it's meaningless. It's meaningless because it's all about the meaning you ascribe to it, right? They've done multiple tests where they've just changed, the Sagittarius and they switch it out with Scorpio or whatever, and people always say, this thing is exactly me. This is totally me, right? Because these things are in a very yin-yang kind of way capable of saying everything and nothing at the same time, right? Because think about it. If your behavior, how you interact, how your week is going to go, how things in the world are going to change was based on how the alignment of the planets and the stars, okay? Don't you think science would be all over this shit? Can you imagine if one of the best predictors of human behavior, which would literally affect everything, it would affect interpersonal relationships, it would affect world politics, it would affect the economy, if you had such an accurate predictor of human behavior, all right? They would totally want to study it and monetize it if it's real. But guess what? It's not. All right? That's why no one gives a shit about it except people who want to give a shit about it, right? Yeah. So, anyway, it's kind of like that kind of stuff, right? So, the Dimmak and the death touch, all right? Look, if it was real, all right, if you really could easily disable someone because you press them at a certain time of the day or in a certain place or whatever, okay? Science and the military would be all over that shit because it would be a liability. You know what also would happen, in my opinion? You ever get a really hard massage? Sometimes you get some Chinese granny and she's like working on your neck and she's going into it like this. Do you know how many people would die from getting hard massages because they would accidentally get hit in a death touch point?
Oh, shit.
I'm of the opinion that if Dimmak was real, people would die during massages all the time. People would also die when they accidentally bumped into things that happened to be on that point. Imagine you happen to slam your shoulder into a table at the right time with the right alignment. People would be dropping dead from bumping into stuff. People would be dropping dead from using massage guns. People would be dropping dead from getting a stiff massage from someone. All right? No pun intended there, Mikey Deane. Yeah. Okay?
Word.
All right? You gotta be careful when you talk about this stuff around.
What's funny is I was watching a documentary about Jimmy Superfly Snooker.
Oh man, didn't he kill his girlfriend or something like that?
Yeah, and really? The girlfriend's sister came and went to hang out with them at one point, and she's cracking a lot of jokes, and he just goes into his snooker thing, his snooker act.
Snooker.
And he puts
not snooker.
He puts out the hand to the throat, but
he
lays
didn't
touch
hands.
her.
Yeah,
he lays hands,
yeah.
but without touching her. I think.
Right.
Scared the shit out of her.
Yeah, for sure. So
shit kind of works.
Yeah. Oh, so that was the whole point of that
worked.
story right there. Oh,
Shit
it worked, right? Yeah, so I'm of the opinion, look, that if these kind of disabling death pressure touch things really worked, science in the military would be all over it because this would be a huge advantage for close quarter combat. Also, science would want to know about it because you could technically prevent deaths from these things being hit by accident. You wouldn't even want to know that if you got if you got hit in the neck by accident, you rolled over and you landed on a tennis ball on your neck on a death point at the right thing, you would drop dead. People would literally be dropping dead for apparently no reason people would know, right? So one, science in the military would be all over it, right?
Well, didn't they say Bruce Lee died of the death?
Well, that was one of the many kind of
the
nonsense
5-point
rumors about him,
palm
right?
Exploding hand.
Yeah, no. It was some death touch kind of thing or whatever. Super delayed, of course. So you have these kind of things, right? And then it's like there's a lot of problems because if you want to figure out, okay, is something true or not? Well, there's easy methodologies for that. Okay, one, let's assume all of their claims are true about the death touch and there being all these vulnerable points on your body. All right, what would that have as an implication in the real world? People dying from massages and Theraguns and bumping into shit every day. Okay? All right? And then people are like, oh, well, it's not like that simple. Actually, the guy's got to keep the right amount of pressure for this or whatever. Okay, but then fine. Then how come no one with this knowledge has not just walked into UFC and just grabbed GSP by the neck and then he falls apart like Vader doing a force choke, all right? Yeah. Then show me, right? That's the problem. Now, of course, everything, there's like a spectrum. On the really far end of the spectrum of like the Dimmak, death touch, all that kind of stuff, is the no-touch nonsense. Okay, like Gary Dillman or whatever that dude's name is, who used to be a legitimate karate guy, knew Muhammad Ali, and then just went off the deep end with that stuff. And then there was that one guy in Japan who also did all that no-touch stuff and then fought an MMA guy and got knocked out. Like that, but for me, that's like mass hypnosis. Like the students are all kind of like, they're all just following their leader. It's just like being part of a cult, right? And then you have people that believe, okay, if I, do this thing in a certain sequence or grab you this way or hit you here, I can disable you or kill you or whatever, right? It's still has yet to be proven, right? And the problem is with Chinese Kung Fu is that it's always like, oh, well, it's in secret. Only this Sifu knows it. Only this guy knows. Only the real Kung Fu guys know this stuff. And yet this knowledge somehow never makes it out into a public forum where it can be proven. So until it's proven, remember, when you debunk something like Dimmak or whatever, it's like, no, I know a guy who can do it, and the real Kung Fu guy, that's fine. But since you're the one making the claim, the burden of proof rests on you to prove it. It's not up to me. The burden is not on my side. You're the one making the claim, all right? I'm just of the opinion that until I see it, I have no good reason to believe it, like a horoscope, okay? And the other thing is that there are actual points on the body that are vulnerable. That is different from this being a death touch or something like that, right? If you get hit directly in the eye, you have a very different effect than, let's say, if you just get one, into the chest or something like that, right? Obviously, the eye is vulnerable, right? Getting the bridge of your nose hit with an elbow, right? It's going to break. Your eyes are going to water, right? So you're going to get more damage there than if you got an elbow to the side of the shoulder, right? But that's not because of any secret death touch. It's just parts of your body that are more vulnerable. The throat is more vulnerable, right? Groin is obviously more vulnerable. Getting hit in the liver. So you have these things. So there are points on the body that if they're hit could potentially have a very immediate reaction if you're accurate in a fight, if you have enough power, and if the person is susceptible to that, right? There's also behind right under your ear, right here in the neck, there's like a little kind of nerve bundle that if you press on it, it's quite painful. You can grab someone basically by the scruff of the neck and jam your thumb in this point here, and it hurts like hell. But is that going to disable someone in the middle of the fight? I don't think so.
Isn't that the Vulcan death grip?
The Vulcan death grip, right? And for some people, they don't react to it at all. The same way some people are ticklish and some people are not. So some of those things literally have no effect. By the way, do you know why Leonard Nimoy, why they created the Vulcan death grip? I think I told you this or whatever, right? Because in the original Star Trek, when they tried to give Spock some fighting moves, Leonard Nimoy was so piss poor at doing any kind of choreography that they just wanted to come up with something simple and cool for Spock to do because Leonard Nimoy, the actor, cannot put two moves together, right? But I think that it actually works better because then Spock is like this kind of very straight-laced alien whose entire presence is based on logic. It also makes sense that he would have some weird quick move. You don't see him getting into a fist fight with someone, right? So anyways, I mean, like, look, there are definitely vulnerable spots on the body. But again, this is contextual to whether the person is is vulnerable to that. If you're able to hit that thing in fighting or whatever. So obviously a strong strike to the temple, to the eye, to the bridge of the nose, to the jaw, to the crotch, to the solar plexus,
crotch punch.
To the liver, to the kidneys, to the back of the neck. All right, these are all things that can have more effect than other punches or blows that just land on the body, right? But I still don't equate that to these secret death points or whatever. I'm still waiting to see someone show that reliably.
Show and prove,
Yeah,
bro.
kill someone by touching them, bro, and then I'll believe you. Yo, man, until I see someone get killed with that stuff, I don't believe it. It's basically my stance.
Okay.
Hey, Kung Fu Genius listeners, if you're looking for an easy way to support this podcast, please consider joining the Kung Fu Genius Patreon. You can support for as little as $5 a month and get access to episodes a few days early. Higher levels of support get additional goodies, exclusive content, and even your name in the description. The baller level of support will give you the opportunity to be a Dre for a day and give me a rest from this guy over here. A link for the Kung Fu Genius Patreon page is in the description below. You can also support us by subscribing to the Kung Fu Genius on YouTube, liking this video, and sharing it on your social media platforms. When you subscribe on YouTube, don't forget to hit that bell for notifications so you will know as soon as a new episode or a premiere is available for you to watch. For those of us who listen to us on audio, it's a huge help if you don't just rate the podcast, but also write a review wherever you listen to the Kung Fu Genius, such as Apple or Google Podcasts. I really appreciate it. And now back to me.
All right, next up, we got Santeria 78.
Santeria.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Santeria?
Santeria.
Because 77 other ones were already taken.
Santeria.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's supposed to be with a Spanish accent.
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like the French words should be with
You
a
wearing
French
that white
accent.
shirt, you look like a practitioner of Santeria. You see the white suit, yeah.
I got the white kicks.
Yeah. So, I'm half Cuban, so Santeria is like a real thing,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I remember growing up,
Yeah.
and like I had some cousins who were into that
I
stuff.
remember seeing the kid in school in the back of the class wearing all white.
Wearing all white.
wondering What the
Yeah,
fuck
because
is he
he's getting
wearing all white
indoctrinated,
for?
right?
was
Dude,
like,
I
oh,
remember
shit.
when I was a kid in Miami, like we were going to buy something. I was with my aunts.
Oh, right.
And I look at this car that was in the parking lot, and there was a chicken with its head cut off on there. And I'm like, why? I'm like, that's a weird place to put your groceries. And she's like, oh, don't look at it. Don't look at it. There's some Santeria going on. Someone is putting a curse on that person. I was like, ugh. And that was the first time I heard about it, right? And then, yeah, it's crazy. If you want to hear a little bit more about it, if you go on YouTube, Joey Diaz, the Cuban comic, he's often on like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
He was indoctrinated into Santeria when he was younger, and he tells some crazy Santeria stuff. So if you go like just on YouTube and go like Joey Diaz Santeria, for anyone who wants to know like just how crazy that stuff is, you listen to it because he basically lays it out like the way it's done, at least here in the States.
My
Yeah.
lady's Puerto Rican.
Hey, look, seriously, Jamaican voodoo circumvents Santeria anyway. I've seen
Yeah.
marked for death.
Oh yeah, he saw Marked for Death. He knows about the power of voodoo, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, my lady's Puerto Rican, so.
That's what he's saying. Is that why you're wearing all white now?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's gonna put a curse on you. You're gonna get your driver's license, and then you're gonna see there's gonna be a chicken with its head cut
She
off.
lays my clothes
Yeah,
out, and I'm
yeah.
like, babe, it's all white. It said, no, it's okay.
Yeah, it's
Keep
okay.
wearing it every
It's
day.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, the curse is
shit.
coming. It's when we all learn what his real name is.
Hey.
Take it easy.
All right, Santeria 78.
Here we go.
Which classical WT ground techniques, 80s and 90s, would work in an MMA setting?
So I don't think any of them would really work in an MMA setting because one, they were originally devised for self-defense at that time, and two, they're not sophisticated enough for someone who knows jiu-jitsu or something like that. So what he's talking about here is that Sifu Leung has always been a bit forward-thinking in certain aspects of the way he developed Wing Chun. Backward thinking in other ways, and definitely forward-thinking in some. And what some people have to understand is when Sifu Leung or many of the old Chinese Sifus say ground fighting, their idea of that is totally different. All right. When we think of ground fighting, all right, it's actually not a term we use that much anymore. When UFC first came in kind of into the martial arts world, people were talking about ground fighting and grappling, right? And now it's like, people just say jujitsu usually, or they might say submission, right? But back then it was like ground fighting was like this term, and you don't really use that term that much anymore. But in the more traditional martial arts circles, they'll still talk about ground fighting. Now, what you have to understand is that for Westerners who practice something like Wing Chun or do other martial arts, when you hear ground fighting, in your mind you might think of ground and pound, you might think of grappling, you might think of submissions, all the stuff that happens on the ground, essentially fighting on the ground. The Chinese, especially in my experience, or at least in the experience with Topher Mowry, ground fighting is like, in Topher Mowry's mind, at least the way I understood it, okay, I throw you to the ground, you're on the ground, and I give you a shot when you're on the ground, okay? I'm standing, you're on the ground, I kick you, all right? Like maybe I kick you in the ribs, or I give you one shot in the face.
But he doesn't go down to the ground.
Yeah, but like for him, that's ground fighting because like one person is on the ground. He doesn't necessarily contextualize that as two people rolling around. In fact, he doesn't like that. Obviously for self-defense reasons, maybe you don't want to be rolling around on the ground with someone, and also because, let's face it, he's a traditional Wing Chun Sifu, right? So that's not the thing they do, and of course he's going to downplay that and tell you why you shouldn't want to do it, right? But ground fighting can be like, I fall down and I can up kick you, and then I can try to stand up right away using one of the styles of get up that we have in Wing Chun, right? It could be I fall down, I kick your knee, and I try to bring you down quickly. But the idea, it's usually in the context of one grounded opponent, one standing opponent. So when you think of when someone like Topher Mowry or maybe another traditional Wing Chun Sifu talks about ground fighting, it's usually in the context of one grounded opponent, one standing opponent. Because normally for the Chinese, if both partners on the ground, they just call it wrestling. And then they'll say, oh, in Wing Chun, we don't wrestle. All right? Even though wrestling is a very generic term, and, there are lots of different ways that ground fighting can go, and jiu-jitsu, in many respects, is different than wrestling and offers different options and has a different mindset. Like, for example, in wrestling, you don't want to be on your back, whereas in jiu-jitsu, that can be a good position if you know what you're doing. So, Topher Mowry had very basic ground fighting techniques. In fact, when you visit the Hong Kong headquarters, you see photos on the wall, like he's almost like going to a museum. You see photos from the 60s and him with Grandmaster Yip Man at his school in those days and everything. And, one of the photos you see from the 60s is like one person's on the ground, presuming the other person maybe threw them, and the person on the ground is like doing an up kick, which is also something that you see in mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And that's in the 1960s. So we're talking, that was in a time when Grandmaster Yip Man was still alive. And so Topher Mowry's students, they're like all suited up. It looked like it was some kind of fighting contest. And one person's on the ground and they're kind of doing a laps out and doing an up kick, almost like you would do a laps out and kick someone. But now the person kicking is on the ground, but it's one-to-one a Wing Chun technique, just inverted, right? And and you'll see that, and then they'll say, oh, see, like in Wing Chun, we do ground fighting, right? But that context is like maybe the Wing Chun person fell, and they're trying to up kick the person so that they don't go on top of them, and then they're going to try to stand up. Or the context could also be, I throw the person down, and when they're on the ground, I give them a shot, and that's ground fighting. So the first thing when we talk about, oh, does Hong Kong Wing Chun have ground fighting, is that you have to understand the term doesn't mean the same. All right? When a Westerner talks about ground fighting, they're going to assume this means wrestling and rolling and submissions and doing this and doing that and getting out of holds and stuff like that. When you talk to Topher Mowry about ground fighting, you say, yeah, you kick the guy when he's on the ground, or if you fall down, you got to do up kick and try to stand up right away, right? That's literally what they think of ground fighting. So the problem is, like, because sometimes I get asked this, like, oh, I heard learning Wing Chun has ground fighting techniques or whatever. You go, yeah, but not what you think it is. It's like we have the falling leaf roll, the up kick, and then the get up. And like that is Wing Chun.
Get your ass up as fast as possible.
Exactly. But that is Wing Chun ground fighting. Right? Or the guy's on the ground and you pin him with an arm and pin him with a leg and give him a shot like this, right? And so the problem is these are different. There's a different terminology. It's a different context when you say this to a Chinese instructor as opposed to, let's say, European instructor, right? So I have to say that in the traditional Wing Chun, classical Leung Ting Wing Chun, okay, that is more or less the extent of the ground fighting. Now, there's a couple other things. For example, Sifu Leung Ting shows something that actually Bas Rutten showed in an old video, and most jiu-jitsu people do it too, which is if someone kind of powers through a takedown, gets through your defense, and you're falling backwards, that you're basically going to do a back roll and roll over to get on top of them, right? That is something that you've seen in almost like many martial. I remember I saw a video from the 70s of Ron Van Cleef, who was a karate instructor, you know, like doing a karate demo. And then this was way before he got into jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And someone like, you know, goes to take him down, and then he basically sits back, rolls and rolls the guy off of him, right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, in the context of a 70s kung fu movie or something, it could look a little cheesy, but you know, if the person is powering through you and you land backwards and you are connected to them, it is possible to roll backwards and roll that person off of you. So Sifu Leung Ting will actually show that, like, to roll back and to get on top of the person, and then sometimes he'll show like actually the one grappling move that he sometimes does show is what grapplers would call a can opener, which is oddly enough something that requires a little bit of strength. So a lot of like better jiu-jitsu guys don't like to do can openers because it's kind of strength intensive. And in Wing Chun, we really don't want to fight strength on strength. But oddly enough, one of the things Sifu Leung Ting teaches to do on the ground is kind of a can opener. And in the old days, some wrestlers used it to get out of the guard because they would get in a jiu-jitsu person's guard and not know what to do. So basically, you grab the back of the person's head with both arms, like you're going for a double clinch for a knee strike or like a Thai plum or something, and you squeeze and you kind of crank his head forward. So you kind of fold the head down this way here, and that head crank often, at least back in those days, would get someone to let go of their legs. And that's how you would get out of it, right? So he actually would sometimes show you get rolled, and then you kind of do that double, and you kind of crank them like this here. But that's kind of the extent. I mean, he even showed that in his book, Dynamic Wing Chun, right? Okay. So that's something that he showed openly. That's not like some kind of secret closed-door thing. I remember when we were doing Fight Quest, we, you know, because he was a little, he wanted to make sure we were prepared in case any of us had to fight Jimmy. But of course, it ends up no one there was going to fight Jimmy, and that whole thing, you know, I already did the episode on that, right? But I remember it was like the 11th hour, quite literally the 11th hour the night before, he called us into the Hong Kong gym. So we went there like at 11 p.m. And he wanted to show us some grappling kind of stuff just in case like someone was going to try to take us down in the fight. But the irony was they wouldn't let us fight anyway because we weren't Chinese. And so we went there, and for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, we were doing like some stuff that was a little bit off the beaten path from what he had shown me previously. So there were some really interesting takedown defenses that he showed that were like a little bit different. And I've shown you guys this stuff. And, you know, a couple little ideas about rolling the guy off of you if you get pulled to the ground, and, you know, a couple things like that, right? But it wasn't anything like totally out of the ordinary, right? So between like the stuff that he trained us before the Fight Quest and like these things that he's shown and these things that he's taught, the idea of ground fighting in WT is pretty limited, all right? Because it's Wing Chun is a stand-up art. Wing Chun is a traditional Kung Fu style that is not on the grappling end of things. Yes, we have a neck-pulling hand, you have sweeps, you have throws, you have trips, you have things like that. But no, it's not primarily a ground fighting style. And like a lot of people have added some of these things to it.
Those
and
elements,
then and then people think that, oh, that stuff comes from back in the day, as if Yip Man, you know, to his certain private students would be like, okay, no one's around. All right, let's start doing guard passing drills. Okay, this never happened. Okay, so in the EWTO, in the European Wing Chun Organization, they created, I think they did it in the 80s already, but maybe more in the 90s. They created a bit of a ground fighting program using some of the Wing Chun techniques, and of course, more importantly, using the Wing Chun principles on the ground. Okay. And I believe Sifu Amin also might have been one of the people who helped to develop this as well. He certainly taught it. And so it was a couple basic things. Like one, it was like a mount defense. Someone has mounted you, and it's like really simple kind of trap and roll kind of stuff, like day one jiu-jitsu stuff. Okay. But, you know, using the idea that, you know, I'm going to borrow my opponent, and not borrow my opponent's power, but like almost using like the turn on the ground, and it's essentially an upa, all right? Just it's a standard mount defense, right? But nothing super sophisticated. Then there were a couple things like if you're putting a headlock on the ground, all right, using almost the same standing frame like we do, and then moving out and stuff. Very similar to the way I showed you, except the way that I show you guys, I've modified it a little bit from what I learned from my jiu-jitsu training to make it a little bit more sturdy. That actually held up. The headlock defense on the ground, if you add a couple modifications to it, to what they were teaching in WT in the 90s, it actually still works, but you have to know what those modifications are. And then, of course, you have to know a couple variations in case the first one doesn't work. And then there were a couple other things that were shown, like how to get out of an arm lock on the ground, and that stuff was maybe a little bit more questionable or whatever, but these are things that were developed in either the 80s or the 90s, and to be fair, these were things that were developed using Wing Chun ideas, and they were at least already starting to address the problem, where some of the Wing Chun were. And that stuff's not from Sifu Leung Teng. That comes from the European end of things, right? Okay. So again, the problem is there's always sometimes a bit of a conflation where some of the European guys were doing some of these things on the ground, and then the assumption is always, oh, they must come from the guy in Hong Kong. And it doesn't. Those were things that were developed specifically in Europe. And that's not to say good, bad, or indifferent. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. It's just the problem is that because they were the representative of Leung Teng Wing Chun in Europe, the assumption is, well, then this stuff must come from Leung Teng. But those like ground fighting defenses and getting out of different types of holds and things like that on the ground is more a product of the EWTO at that time than something from Sifu Leung Teng. Now they've since, the EWTO in particular, they've since actually added some grappling elements that people can learn. Like they've been training, I think, with GoCore in Los Angeles. So they actually have some kind of like regular grappling stuff in there or whatever. And so again, that's changed again because that stuff is actually more pure grappling that they're doing there. So I think to kind of circle back to the question, that stuff was contextualized for self-defense. What Sifu Leung Teng taught was a lot more stripped down and basic. What the EWTO guys were doing started to address some specific situations on the ground. And for self-defense, just straight up, you're on the ground fighting, defending yourself, that stuff could work. But against an MMA fighter, a professional fighter, I mean, no. I mean, look, you can, but to that case as well, you can go and do jiu-jitsu for a year and get good at it and earn your blue belt, and you can't do shit to the worst grappler in UFC. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, again, it's always like, how good do you think you're really getting at this stuff that you do sometimes in class, right? So that's that.
Thank you. Santeria 78. I mean, Santeria.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
This guy
Thank you.
right here.
All right. Next up, we got Dryzen. Hypothetical. What happened?
Sorry, I fell asleep again.
There are people who ask multiple questions on our YouTube channel. Right. Dudes will come to ask like 5, 6, 7 questions.
Yeah.
And what do? You drip dry them. You do one episode, and then like the dude's got 5 questions, and his second question you won't put in there until like 3 episodes later. No. Meanwhile, Dryzen, who by the way, I never actually see anywhere in the comments on YouTube, somehow manages to get into every episode.
He's in the comments. What are you talking about?
No.
I don't know. I don't see
I've
it.
seen him in the live chat too.
Oh, in the live chat?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. We'll see next time. We'll see in the live chat of this episode if he's in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that sound?
See if both you and he are in the live chat
Yeah,
at
I
the
know.
same time. Is
Dre and Dryzen in the live chat at the same time? We'll see. I don't believe it. I think it's like Michael and LaToya. You never saw them together. Suspicious. Suspicious.
Michael and
or, as my
LaToya.
daughters would say, that's very sus. I've been told I need to say that more often because that's the thing.
Sus.
Because it's some game that they play Among Us or something. You got to say sus.
Yeah.
That's like a
I've been saying
thing.
sus in England for years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't make it
Sus.
right. Okay, forget it. I'm not going to say that anymore. He just, in one sentence, made it uncool.
Properized.
Yeah. What do you think? Next, I'm going to get a British car or something like that, right?
I know, shocker.
With Union Jack taillights.
Oh, sorry.
All right, let's go.
All right. Dryzen asked, hypothetical. You're walking up the stairs to your school, City Wing Chun.
That's my school.
Yep. On the 4th floor. You hear weird noises, but nothing alarming because you have a team always and there's people always training here. So it's not alarming. You open the door and enter your school to find a class full of Yip Man students from the late 50s period. William Chung is the instructor at the moment, while the old man is sitting down, chillaxing on the side, you know. Everyone turns to you and look at you, and there's one English-speaking student, kind of looks like Bruce Lee, yells out, "Si Hing! Guai Lo came to challenge the school." William Chung then steps through all the students and says, "So you want to talk hands, huh? What do you do?"
Wow, that's quite the predicament. All right. I was in 1959.
Something like that. 57 or so.
Let's make it 59.
58.
Let's make it 59.
Oh, yeah?
Because then they're kind of like peak. That's right before, around the time both William Chung and Bruce Lee leave. So you got kind of the peak versions of them there, right?
Okay.
I would say, okay. I accept your challenge, William Chow, but only under one condition. And I'll say with the old man right there, you use only the traditional Wing Chun style that he taught you that privately here. Okay? Because I want to see what his reaction is. Because that, if we're in this time machine, okay, that would tell you everything you need to know. All right? No, and I mean that in all honesty.
Okay.
All right? I'm not trying to clown him or anything like that.
No.
All right?
Of course not.
And maybe he doesn't want to do it in front of the other students because it's super secret, right? So I'll say, okay, we'll go upstairs. And I'll say, okay, but you have to fight with the secret Leung Bik traditional Wing Chun. Now, if the story is true, that he did learn that from the old man at that time, then he would 100% know what I was talking about.
Oh.
And if it's a story that he created later, after Yip Man passed away, after Bruce Lee passed away, he would look at me completely befuddled. All right?
Like, what is this guy
And so that's all
talking
you
about?
need to know.
What is this
All
guy
right?
talking about?
Because remember, we talked about this before. You know, like for me, I don't have any skin in the game. The story might be true. I don't know. Okay? Yip Man may have shown a secret superior style of Wing Chun to one teenager in his 22-year teaching career at the expense of not teaching this to anyone else. It's possible. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah.
Okay? The question you always want to ask is, well, in the remaining 22 years of his teaching, or during that 22-year teaching period, why he never photographed himself doing the real style, why he, if the traditional Wing Chun is the real one or whatever, why didn't he take photographs doing that style? Why would he be so comfortable teaching an inferior style for so long? Also, if he only taught it to one person, when did he practice it? And if it was better and superior, wouldn't he want to practice that one all the time? But if he's mostly practicing with his students and teaching them the other Wing Chun, then that means he's actually getting out of practice with this superior style. So look, and I'm not saying that that's not true. I will give him all the benefit of the doubt, even though he's the one making the claim. But these are the hurdles you have to think about if that's where you're going to go with the William Chung story, right? So if I were there in 1959 and saw William Chung, then I would say, hey, or maybe I'll have to whisper it to him because it's secret. Hey,
Yeah.
we can have a fight, but you have to use the traditional Leung Bik style of Wing Chun that you learned secretly from Yip Man in the private lessons. And his reaction in that moment would tell me everything I need to know. All right, if he looked at me like I was a crazy person on the subway, all right, then I'd be like, all right, got it. All right. And if he put his hands up in that classical TWC guard, I would say, oh, there's something to the story. And that's it.
Oh, okay.
See, all of these Dryzen questions are always trying to get me into like a fight with someone,
What's
right?
up with that? I noticed
But I'm
that.
always like, no, let me spin this either in a way to alter history or to find out more about it. Whereas you're constantly trying to get me in fights with everyone, right?
Not me.
And then-
Dryzen. Not me.
Oh,
Oh,
Dryzen.
sorry. Dryzen.
Right.
And then you know what I would do? I would look at the Bruce Lee and I would say, hey, stay away from B-list Taiwanese actresses. And he would look at me like, what? I say, hey, no matter what happens in your life,
Yeah.
stay away from the B-list, stay away from the Taiwanese actresses, and you'll be okay. And you'll know someone in the future named Bob Baker. Tell him to burn those letters. Anyway. Oh, by the way, there was some chucklehead in the comments who asked if we were, in fact, in the same room when we recorded this podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was like, no.
No,
So
of
that's
course not.
the big secret about our podcast.
We do it piece
I-
by
you're
piece.
on
You
film.
record,
I have created a studio using this soundproofing material
Yeah.
here in Manhattan. Okay. You are in Miami, Florida,
Right.
in a podcast studio that looks like it's the other half of my office. All right.
That's how it's
all
designed.
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Okay. Because what people don't realize is, one, we can't actually stand each other. That's why we have to do it separately.
Right.
And two, you have an irrational phobia of people with glasses. So you can't even be in the same room with me, right?
Such a
So anyway, but you know,
such
somebody
a confusing phobia. to have, too.
somebody pointed out that they're like, yo, are you guys even in the same room together because of the way it's cut? And so the bag is out. Like the cat is out of the bag. The bag is out. What the fuck am I talking about? All right? So now people know I basically talk to a wall.
Okay.
You talk to a wall. And we splice it together.
I mean, it's really
So
brilliant
peop-
editing.
It's
if you
brilliant
ask me.
editing, especially now with Andrew. He knows how to do
Oh,
it.
He's the man.
So anyway, but I love doing this podcast, even though you're not in the same room with me. And give me a fist
Thank
bump.
you.
That's what's up. All right, here we go. All
All right.
next question.
Next up, we got Kendall Scott.
I like how you look at Mikey to make sure you said it correctly. Because, you know, I can't see the screen. I don't know what's coming. I can only guess you're saying it wrong.
Yes.
It's a safe bet.
All
That's
right.
a very safe bet.
Kendall Scott. Hey, Sifu Richter. Love your podcast.
Thank you.
Like you, I've been a Bruce Lee nerd since the age of 8.
I'm a Bruce Lee geek,
Okay,
not a nerd.
clarify.
Okay.
One question I have never heard a definitive answer on regarding Bruce Lee's on-screen persona. How did he come up with his cat-like screams and noises that he did on the screen? By most accounts, he did not do them when he fought in real life.
Right.
They only sound cool when he did them, and imitators always sound silly. I have always wondered how he came up with them. According to Robert Klaus's biography on him, an old Chinese military psychological tactic was to scare the enemy by pretending to be possessed by the spirit of a crazed female demon. Only theory I have ever heard, and it kind of makes sense. Just curious what your thoughts were.
So that's a good question. Of course, it's a little difficult to know definitively. So that's actually something I've thought about. I've talked to people about it. There are a few different theories about, like, where do these kind of cat-like screams come from, right? That he does. His fears, all these kind of sounds that he makes, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not something that's normally done in Chinese martial arts. So in Japanese martial arts, especially karate, you have the kiai, you know, this kind of yell, this when you punch, when you kick, where you're putting everything into it. And that's similar to the way boxers might snort or exhale when they punch, right? It allows you to kind of channel your power in there because you focus and you breathe. I don't mean channel it in like a woo-y kind of metaphysical way. I mean just kind of put everything into it, right? And in some Kung Fu styles, you have some sounds when they make certain movements. In Wing Chun, we don't really make sounds. I mean, some people do, but in general, in Wing Chun, you don't really make these sounds. And so the question is, well, what the hell is Bruce Lee doing in his movies? Like, where does that stuff come from, right? And there are a few different theories of that. Now, first of all, it's theatrical, all right? So I think a lot of mental calories are burned on things that are otherwise just little devices that are written into the movies to make them more entertaining, right? People always, you know, humans are pattern-seeking primates, so we're constantly looking for patterns and reasons and meaning in things that might be kind of meaningless or might not have as big of a deal as you think it is, right? So because most people would rather believe a conspiracy theory than no theory at all when it comes to anything, right? People are uncomfortable saying, I don't know, all right? And being just comfortable with the fact that there are things in this world that are unknown and unknowable. And this gap that we have in certain things that you'll never know often creates people to fill in those gaps intentionally with something because they believe that some explanation is better than no explanation. But if you don't have all the facts, then sometimes the only explanation is to say, I don't know. Okay? I've heard a bunch of crazy speculations.
Okay.
All right? But I cannot say 100% for sure. I'm sure in this book, the moment I say this, someone say, well, in so-and-so's book, they said it was this. Robert Klaus said female demon. Someone else is going to say something else, right? So the problem is, like, whatever I say, someone in the comments going to go, no, actually it was this. And the problem is, no, actually you don't know, okay? No, actually you don't know. You are speculating because you've read it in this book, or you heard it here, or you heard it from this person that you like. So that's going to be your story, but you don't actually know if that's it. Okay? So one of the speculations, all right, is that one, it's theatrical. He wanted to do something that was a little bit different from what other people were doing. He didn't want to have the grunts of the kiai or karate, right? And he didn't just want to snort like a boxer. He wanted to do something unique. Bruce Lee was, after all, a showman, right? So one simple explanation for it is that it's something he created for the characters that he portrayed on film, okay? There's another one that said that while he was moving around, this one I heard in Hong Kong, and I don't believe this one, but I'm just a messenger. I'm telling you what I heard. I'm not saying that I endorse this before people in the comments go, yeah, that was total bullshit. Is that, while he was like doing his choreography, he would kind of like talk to himself a little bit. I don't mean in a crazy way. It'd be like, okay, boom, right kick spin, or boom this, or whatever, or turn spin, whatever. So I don't believe that he did that, because you can literally
play it.
Yeah, you can kind of look at his mouth and see he's not doing it. And some people even speculated further that he would be yelling obscenities the whole time. F this, S this, F that, whatever, right? Which again, look at his mouth. I don't actually see him doing that. So in dubbing, they wanted to cover that stuff. But the reason why that story doesn't make any sense is because they shot those movies without sound anyway.
Yeah,
Okay? So, I mean, but again, I'm just telling you some of the theories that exist for these things, right? One thing I know for certain is that in the multiple fighting sequences, so let's take the iconic dojo crashing sequence from Fists of Fury.
Okay.
He's got all of the guys around him. And what you'll notice is the karate guys who are in there, which are the Japanese guys who are mostly Chinese actors, when they attack him, they yell before they attack. So if you go and you watch that fight scene, you're going to hear that pretty much when somebody's about to attack, they go, what? And then they'll come in and attack. And that was in the original choreography, because when he's fighting the multiple opponents, that was Bruce Lee's signal that the next dude is coming from here.
Yeah.
And then that guy would yell, he knew it was coming from there. And that guy would yell, and he knew that it was coming from there. All right? So they used the screams of the attackers, at least in that dojo scene, as kind of a bit of a cue, because he would have to like kick and punch a few of them in one take before they yelled cut. So it's also possible that some of his screaming, now why he actually does it in that way, could have also been cues for the other actors as well. Okay? So again, these are things that I heard. I cannot say for certain what it is, right? If there's someone out there that knows definitively, I would love to hear it. The problem is people say they know definitively, and they're going to say like, no, because so-and-so, and maybe so-and-so is a student of Bruce Lee, said that it's this. Okay, well, how does a student of Bruce Lee, who learned from Bruce Lee before Bruce Lee went to Hong Kong to make movies, know why he did the battle cat sounds he did in those films? Like, that guy knows Bruce Lee, that guy was close to Bruce Lee, but that still doesn't explain how that guy somehow found out something that happened later, right? But because that guy is well-respected or whatever, they're going to say, see, you got to listen to this guy or whatever. As far as I understand, Bruce didn't go on record in any of his interviews, written or otherwise, and explain why he did that. So
No one ever asked him.
no, but people don't like that. People will tell you for certain, no, bro, it was because of this. He was channeling internal chi, bro. It's all internal chi, bro. I know it, man. I know. You know why my sensei, all right, back in Pennsylvania, told me in the 80s, and he knew Bruce Lee. He even sparred with Bruce Lee back in the day. So he knows. Yeah, he knows that. He knows that. So I'm telling you, just in case you didn't know, I know that.
He
all
fought
right?
Bruce Lee.
Yeah, this is like half of the comments we get on the Kung Fu Genius channel. No, man, no, I know, man. I know, bro. I know. I'll tell you. I know. You know some stuff, but I'll tell you because I know this stuff. I know it. All right, my sensei told me.
Love it.
All right, we got time for one more? Ooh, looks like you're having a hard time picking, huh?
I got one.
Better not be another Dryzen question.
No, it's not. I mean, the next up is Philip Jakumovsky. He got like 3 in here. So but we can't go with that one.
You can't have too many Jakumovskis in one.
No, in one room. All right. Next up, we got.
Don't tell me this dude's name is Phil McCracken.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
We got a doctor in the house.
Oh, a doctor. All right.
Dr. Vortex Sophia. Shout out. All right. What is the silliest thing you've tried when studying ninja stuff when you realized what you were attempting was a load of tripe?
I love this woman so much, by the way. She's so fabulous.
This is such a great question, too, because it almost sounds like I'm still experimenting with ninjutsu stuff to this day, right? It's like,
Well, you are, though.
Yeah, what did you figure out as a load of tripe? Okay, so last week, I was on top of one of the New York buses trying to throw shurikens, and it just wasn't working, right?
This week, man.
Well, I talked about it a little bit on the Ninja episode. Shout out to the Ninja episode.
Yes.
One of the least watched episodes
If you
on our
have
channel.
not
It's
seen
my
the
favorite
Ninja
episode.
Please.
Not only is that episode crazy, I
Watch
talk
it.
about the ninja movies, talk a little bit about my ninja background as a child, but also that was right after my shoulder surgery, and I was on all the pain meds.
Yes.
I was
Hi.
I was so whacked out of my brain in that episode, right? Okay, so yeah, when I was a kid, I bought the book Mystic Arts of the Ninja by Stephen K. Hayes. Mm-hmm. I got it at B. Dalton Books at the mall. All right?
B. Dalton
B. Dalton in the
booksellers.
house. Remember those in the mall?
Yes.
And you know, the ancient Japanese art of ninjutsu is legit if you buy it in Eatontown, New Jersey at a mall.
Of course.
Yo, man, where'd you find out all this secret ninja stuff? Yo, I bought it at the mall, all right? Okay? Already the first problem, right?
Yes.
And in that book was like such a godsend for me as a child, right? Because I watched those ninja movies with Sho Kisugi, and I wanted to learn more about it. Now, I was okay with, I wasn't too worried about learning the fighting techniques because I was learning karate, and then later I learned taekwondo. And when you watch those ninja movies, I mean, they're kind of just punching and kicking. Yeah, you got the occasional neck snap. I mean, if they're not using weapons, when you look at the ninja stuff, it's kind of just plain Jane punch and kick with the occasional, neck break.
Kinda
Or
like that kick from the floor up.
yeah, it's a lot of
was
like that kind of
bullshit.
sneaky stuff or whatever, right? But the real thing about the ninjas is like the use of the weapons and like all the secret like disappearing and all that kind of stuff.
yes.
Now you see me, now you don't, right? The hand comes out of the hot tub and then you grab it and you chop it off only to find out it's a mechanical arm and the ninja's there all along, right? That's the stuff you want because those are real, like Napoleon Dynamite would say, those are skills.
Okay.
All right?
Right,
And like
right.
Napoleon Dynamite said, chicks love guys with skills. Nunchuck skills, bow staff skills,
Right.
invisible arm ninja skills.
All the
right?
skills.
And so I wanted to learn the skills. I didn't care so much about learning like the ninja punching and kicking because I was like, I'm doing the karate, I'm doing the taekwondo. I'm fine with my fist fighting and kicking stuff, right? And so that book had like a whole section on invisibility, like how to move undetected.
Cloaking.
Yeah, so it had like how you're supposed to like walk on like different types of surfaces and how you like don't make noise and how you kind of blend in and all that kind of stuff. So like I would, like a moron, we grew up in New Jersey. We had like a yard, trees and stuff like that. And I would go like, I'm going to practice the art of invisibility. All right. Now, mind you, the one thing you understand as an adult about ninjas that you don't understand as a kid is there's no such thing as a ninja uniform. Okay.
Oh, man.
A ninja is like a mercenary. All right. Even if you go back and read about the history of ninja, right? It's not a formalized martial art. A ninja is someone you hire because you need to take care of someone.
Yeah.
Or you hire them because you need them to go in there and steal some plans for you or piss in that guy's tea and kill him or something like that, right? So the ninja is like someone you hire. Basically, he's a mercenary. He's like a soldier for hire. Yeah. So if the job requires that person to dress like an everyday person to sneak in, they're going to dress like an everyday person, right? Yeah. If it requires them to break into a place at nighttime, well, then they might wear a black suit with a mask to cover their identity. If they have to do something in broad daylight, a ninja is probably going to dress like everyone else so that literally they are invisible. They blend in, right?
Right.
So I'm like, I need to practice my ninja skills. And I think I even talked about this on the ninja episode. So what do? I get suited up because I had a full ninja outfit that I got from the Army Navy surplus store.
Yeah.
I even had the tabby boots with the split in the middle. I had 2 pouches
Split
with
toe.
nunchucks. Yeah, the split toe. And the ninja suit, by the way, so you have the top, which is like kind of a karate style top, but 1, it's black, and 2, in the top lapel, it's got a pocket for shurikens. All right. So like, you know, I'm in there, and like for me, one of the baddest scenes in like ninja movie lore is in Revenge of the Ninja, which by the way is the best ninja movie ever made in the States. Anyone wants to talk to me about Pray for Death, all right, they need to get the hell out of here with that. Okay?
9.5 ninjas.
Get out of here with 9.5 ninjas. Get out of here with 9.5 deaths of the ninja. Revenge of the Ninja is the gold standard, all right? I'm not talking about like there are new ninja movies from Japan and ninja movies from China that are amazing or maybe better. I'm talking about like Golden Globus, okay? Globus.
Ninja
Okay.
3.
Ninja 3 The Domination is fun, but it's no Revenge of the Ninja. First of all, it doesn't even have enough Sho Kasugi.
5 elemental
Okay, fair enough. It
ninjas.
doesn't have
Yeah, but
enough
those are
show.
Chinese films. Again, Chinese and Japanese ninja films out of the equation. All right, American ninja movies. I mean ones made in America, not just the American ninja movies. All
Okay.
right, we're not just talking about Dudikoff. All right,
Okay.
but Sho Kasugi. Okay,
Love Dudikoff.
in Revenge of the Ninja. Okay, spoiler alert. All right, the movie's like
Dudikoff.
the movie's like 40 years old, but spoiler alert. Sho Kasugi's family is slain in Japan. All right, in Tokyo, which is so common in the 80s.
Yeah.
Your family would get murdered by ninjas
I hate when that happens.
left and right in Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
He goes to Los Angeles in the 80s because it's apparently safer in Los Angeles than in Tokyo, which is already the part of the movie where like, that's what? Tokyo is like the safest place. And you're going to go, no, let's go to Los Angeles, all right, as an immigrant in the 80s, all right? This is the place to go.
Yes.
And then, of course, his partner ends up being a secret. The white guy ends up being a secret ninja who's smuggling drugs in the dolls or whatever. And that dude kills his mom, the guy he thought was his friend, Braden. He kills Grandma, all right, who also had some ninja skills, all right, but he kills her. And then it's like, and he had vowed when he went to the States not to do ninja shit, okay, because he was a ninja and ninjas killed his family. He goes to the States to start a life, and then what does he do? He puts a seal on his sword, very similar to Big Boss with like the I can't fight because I got the thing around my neck.
Yeah.
So he puts his ninja weapons away. He still practices his like karate and his martial arts to keep his martial art practice, but he's done with being a ninja because ninjas and that ninja lifestyle and living that ninja life is what killed his family in Japan. So what does he do?
Gotta slow it down.
Puts a seal on the sword. I'm done being a ninja.
Yeah.
Turns out his best friend, that dude's a ninja. That dude's using his business to do some illegal shit. And that dude ends up kidnapping his son, kidnapping this other weird blonde chick that had the hots for him, and killing his moms. And then it was like, all right, I got to go back to being a ninja.
Oh, man.
Right? Because you know the problem about ninjas, only a ninja can destroy a ninja.
Yeah.
So, in one of the most epic ninja scenes, where Sho Kasugi's character, I think it's Cho Osaka is his name, he decides he's got to be a ninja again. And he opens the case, and it's like lit, and you see all of his weapons. And then, of course, that the theme music comes in, din, 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 and you see it, right? And then, like, his stuff's there, and he's like, he has to break his he has to do it, right?
Yeah.
And then you see him putting on his mask. And it's almost like, and he's putting everything on, and then you see he's got the sword, and he breaks
Yeah.
the seal, right?
Ooh.
And then he's doing there, and he's doing all the hand signs, and he's bringing his ninja
gang
ninja-ness
signs.
back. He's doing
Yeah.
the ninja gang signs, all those kind of things, right?
yeah.
And then like the storm and wind and everything coming in, like when he puts that on, it's like the most epic. I'm going back to being a ninja. I'm
Goosebumps.
putting my shit on scene, right? So I would be like in my basement, and I put all my weapons. And, you know, like I didn't have like a real sword. I had like a fake one, but I had the same thing, like show, because it was in a case, right? And I would open it up, right? And I would imagine like that shit was lit, and all that stuff would be there. And then I had a mirror there, and I would put on my ninja suit. I put my mask on. I would tie that on, right? I put the sword on. I would put my shurikens in there. Choom. I'm gonna go out and practice invisibility.
Okay.
And I walk out into my backyard, and I'm doing like the Stephen K. Hayes walking thing, whatever. And I climb up into a tree, and I think I told this story before. And I'm hiding up there, right? And this girl goes by on her bike. And she doesn't even look up. And she goes, "Hey, Alex." And she saw me right away. And I was so angry. So angry. And then I just kind of climbed down the tree dejected, take my mask off. It's like sad ninja walk back to my basement, take that ninja stuff off, and I go, I'll stick with trying to be a wannabe kung fu guy for a while, right? Pretty much. So for me, I guess not realizing that if you really want to be invisible during the daytime, probably don't wear the black ninja suit in the middle of the day. Maybe just dress like a normal person. You know, had I worn like, I don't know, khakis and gone up into there, I wouldn't be this... Enter the tree. I wouldn't be this, like, you know, sticking out like a sore thumb kind of guy, right? So anyway, and that's all I got to say about that. All right, guys. Well, what did you think of that episode of the Kung Fu Genius? What would you like for me to talk about in a future episode? And if you have questions, things you want me to answer, and don't forget, Dre is the one who actually picks those, so don't private message me. Write them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius. Tell your friends about it. Tell your moms about it. And I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm sea gung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex Richter, always the victor.
Tell your moms about it. I don't know where that came from. Tell your moms about it.
Throw in a different relative.
It's always a little bit. Yeah. Tell your nephew about it.
Yeah. Lots of ninja invincibility. Lots of, I'll fight you. Only if you use that super secret style you learned from Yip Man. Let's get to it.
So close. He said invincibility.
Invisibility.
I was excited too. I was like, wow, he's getting better at it.
Yeah, he was getting better, but no, he was like, I'm surprised you didn't catch that. He said
Yeah, that's why you're my book editor, by the way.
Lots of gems. Lots of gelms. Gelms.
He's like the worst human I know.
Lots of gems. Lots of
Ninja invisibility. Yeah. Strictly for my ninjas.
This is strictly for my ninjas. Everybody get injured if they come.